As I would not be a slave, so would I not be a master.
This expresses my idea of democracy. Whatever differs from this, to the extent of the difference, is no democracy.
Our reliance is in our love for liberty. Our defense is in the spirit which prizes liberty as the heritage of all people in all lands everywhere.
Destroy this spirit, and we have planted the seeds of despotism at our own doors.
Those who deny freedom to others to deserve it not for themselves and cannot long retain it.
Why should there not be a patient confidence in the ultimate justice of the people? Is there any better or equal hope in the world?
Let us have faith that right makes might, and that in faith let us to the end dare to do our duty as we understand it.
Good morning and welcome. Here in this place of comfort and challenge, the familiar and the surprising, you're all welcome. I'm Dave Lloyd. I'm a member of the congregation, and I'll be leading the service today. Ron Solberg is our worship associate, and our music is led by Jamie Passman, and our choir, the Celebration Singers, led by Julia Beckman. Text services are provided by Alex Dvorak and Jean Schaefer. If you're new here or visiting, please join us for coffee and snacks downstairs after the service. Grab a green mug like this one so that we know to greet you. There's always a lot going around the church, and you can read all about it in News and Notes, which arrives in your inbox every Friday. If you'd like to receive news and notes, you can go to the church's website, hinsdaleunitarian.org, and click on the Connect button at the top of the homepage. Or stop by the visitors table in the living room at the back of the church, and we can get your email address. The first Earth Day was on April 22nd, 1970. It was the idea of a Democratic Senator, Gaylord Nelson of Wisconsin, and Pete McCluskey, a Republican congressman from California. See, good people of different parties can work together to improve our country and our world. The first Earth Day attracted 20 million Americans, 1 in every 10 Americans at that time, to take to the streets, parks, and auditoriums to protest against 150 years of environmental degradation. Within a year, the government created the Environmental Protection Agency and the Occupational Health and Safety Administration and adopted the National Environmental Education Act and the Clean Air Act, and 2 years later, the Clean Water Act. Okay, boomers. Today we celebrate the whole month of Earth Month in April. And here at UCH, we have events going on all month. So this is the announcements portion. Today after church, your Green Sanctuary Committee is holding an informational display downstairs in the Alice Warren Room, where we will talk about the environmental actions we are working on, and just as important, ask you, and you, and you, and you, what environmental actions this church should be working on. So I'll invite you during the service to think about what actions the church should be doing that we're not doing so far. We'll also answer FAQs on what each of us can do, from small actions to big, including where and how to recycle all kinds of stuff, carbon offsets for travel, climate-friendly banks, improving habitat for birds and bees, and even green burial. Stop by, ask questions, and give your opinions. Next week, our second Sunday collection will be for Faith in Place, a multi-denominational organization coordinating environmental action in churches, temples, and mosques all over Illinois. So next week, you'll hear even more about it. The last weekend of this month, weather dependent, I will lead a wildflower tour at Bemis Woods Forest Preserve on Ogden Avenue. We'll pick a date depending on the weather, probably Saturday, I think it's the 22nd, 26th, so watch this space for more information. And if you like the tour, you can come back the following week to Bemis Woods, where you get a chance to get dirty and do hands-on work improving habitat in the forest preserves. That'll be on Saturday, May 3rd at Bemis Woods South, starting at 9 o'clock a.m. Any age from 6 to 96 or more are welcome. and we provide the tools and snacks. And don't forget our annual Beltane celebration on Sunday, May 4th, right after the church. For years, we've enjoyed a pageant with the Green Man, Snow Queen, and Flower Children, but this year, we're giving the pageant a rest. And we'll have, but we'll still have the maypole. And we'll have less watching and more participating. We'll have games, crafts, danger, and of course, dancing around the maypole. And on Saturday, May 17th, Green Sanctuary is helping out at a massive recycling event at Redeemer Lutheran Church on 1st Street, east of downtown Hinsdale. They're shredding for your tax and financial documents. You can bring bikes, school supplies, fabrics, electronics, lots of stuff. That's Saturday, May 17th, and again, you'll learn more about it. And Ron has an announcement about a project that one of our former members, Ed McDevitt, is working on.
And what a joy this was. Short time ago, I opened up my email and received a message from Ed McDevitt. And some of you remember Ed was a member here, and now he's at Oak Park, but he was our president at one point, and then he went to Oak Park and became president there. So he brought his leadership, shared it there. My personal joy is really twofold, and it's in many forms, and the people who create it. The most specific moment here, though, is what friend Ed McDevitt shared. What he shared with me at that point is he created, over time, a document called Chicago's Public Art, a paean and a lament with his art can save us and life's ideas. And in fact, some of that art will be displayed. I expect it will. There we go. He shared a number of pieces of art that he had put in his material, but he found that there are 5,000 to 6,000 pieces of art in downtown Chicago, the outside, not in buildings, but outside. In fact, it's the most, according to his words, of any city except for Philadelphia, that we have this wonderful art. And those of you who have walked the streets of downtown Chicago know that it's beautiful. This first one is a Belmont station. We all ride this train together, is the first one. The second is a Henry Moore Art Institute of Chicago in the garden outside of the Institute. And the third is the flight of Daedalus and Icarus, and it's across from City Hall. But there were so many more that he shared with me. And in fact, it was such a glorious experience that I'll be featuring Ed in an upcoming history newsletter that I send out. And if any of you are interested, by the way, in getting this history newsletter that I send out every couple of weeks, give me your email and you'll be on my list to receive that newsletter. But I also want to share with you a joy that we have here. We have our own artists and musicians, and of course Jamie at the piano is a regular. But I also want to point out a specific artist we have back here, Peter, who did the piece that's above the fireplace out in the living room there. And I asked him for a title and said, well, he's thinking about it. It says Birds in the City, and is what he calls it. I call it 7 birds because that's the number that there are. But you might want to talk to him about it. But he changes. How often do you change those paintings, Peter? Every couple of months. But anyway, take a look at as you go out. And he does this wonderful work. He's a talent in many areas, but that's certainly one of them. Peter, thank you so much for contributing that to us. That's the joy. The art, and the music, and the things that we share with one another. Lighting our chalice. We light our chalice, the symbol of our church and denomination, with these words. Please join me. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and hear.
This is a story for all ages. Any kids who are here, you can hang out where you are, and we'll read through this story before you go over to your classes. There was a boy named Alex. No one involved in this church. He was looking forward to spending the day with his father, but his father had to work that day. So he had to go to his grandfather's house to spend the day. Not Grandpa. He tells those long stories about weird people, and he talks funny, and he doesn't even have any good games. But, that's where he had to go. Dad had things to do. So he gets there, and his grandfather gives him a game to play that's a motorcycle racing game. And Alex says, oh, okay, so can you trade with the other players? No, you just race the motorcycle. Oh, is there a big landscape that you get to go on and find hidden things? No, you sort of race on a track. Oh, are there cheat codes? No, it's an old game. You get fast and steer. And the game is all pixelated. Oh man, he's playing this boring game. The whole day he's got. Wait, let's get rid of that text. So the grandfather says, oh, look, and he points out to the back window, and there on top of the maple tree, over the garage, there's this bird, the size of his head. He says, what kind of bird is that? And his grandfather says, it's a hawk. And in fact, if I look in my bird book here, I think it's a sharp-shinned hawk. You can tell from the feathers and the patterns. Wow, how do you know that stuff? Well, you look it up. What's the bird doing? Well, I think he's eating lunch. And you can see the bird dipping down onto the branch and pulling strings of stuff. Oh, what's that? I think he's got a sparrow. We got a lot of sparrows. Oh, it's gross. Hey, circle of life, So he's watching that. That's pretty fascinating. And then his grandfather says, well, I think it's time for us to have lunch. We don't have any sparrow guts, but I can get you a peanut butter sandwich. I said, oh, okay, peanut butter and jelly? I said, well, I have orange marmalade. I said, oh, no. I said, but wait, I got something else. And he gets this jar, and it's all white inside, and it's marshmallow. He says, marshmallows for lunch? He says, yeah, it's a fluffernutter. I said, fluffernutter? What's that? Didn't you ever have a fluffernutter before? By Jove, what do they teach in schools these days? And he says, that's another thing, Grandpa. Why do you say weird things like, by Jove? And the grandfather says, I can tell you, but it's a story. So Alex is like, all right, let me hear the story. He said, all right, back in the olden days, people, when they were really sure of what they were saying, is believe me, they would say, honest to God. I swear to God this is true. And people just started getting really casual with swear to God. Oh, God, you see OMG all the time. There's a lot of people who are very religious. They don't like to hear people, it says right in the Bible, don't use the God's name in vain. What's going on? So somebody came up with, wait, there's this old god from the Roman times. His name was Jove. We could swear by Jove, and you're not going to get in trouble because nobody believes him anymore. So that's why I say by Jove, because I like to amuse myself. So Alex is thinking that's not a bad story. So then after lunch, his grandfather cleans up, and by the way, the fluffernutter had banana slices in it. Okay, so he's got the banana skin, and he's got some other food things, and he puts it into a little bin right on the sink. So, oh, what are you doing? That's gross. Well, it goes outside. It's good for the soil. So what are you talking about? So he says, come on, I'll show you. They go out to the big compost bin, and he takes all this rotten, like eggs, eggshells, and old lettuce ends, and banana peels, coffee, grounds, tea, dumps it in there. I said, oh, that's gross. What are you going to do with that? Well, it's going to go in the garden. Oh, you got to be kidding. This is so gross. So they're outside. They walked around the garden. And some of the flowers, they're purple ones, they seem to be vibrating in the air. And his grandfather says, oh, look at that. So, wait, do these plants have motors on them or something? Said, no, let's get real close. And they got real close. Every single flower had a bee on it. And all the bees were vibrating. And he pointed out there's lots of different kinds of bees. If you look real close, they got different patterns of colors and different shapes. And, Alex is kind of careful about this. And Grandfather says, bees don't sting you unless you poke at them. They're there for us to look at. And then later on, it was time for salad, or for supper. And his grandfather went to get some lettuce and tomatoes for salad in the garden. And Alex goes with him. And the lettuce was weird shapes. You know, it wasn't just green leaves. They were different colors and there were spots on them and fringes at the end. What's all this? It's heirloom lettuce. It's what I grow. And then the tomatoes, you know, tomatoes are supposed to be big and round and red. These were weird, too. Some were as small as grapes, and his grandfather just popped them off and, you know, threw them right in his mouth. I thought, wow, these are pretty good. And then they were all different shapes. Like some were longer and not round and different colors. So what's all this? And his grandfather said, well, these are heirloom tomatoes I plant. Where do you get them? Well, you got to know where you look for them. And when they had the salad, the tomatoes were the best tomatoes he had ever had. He says, wow, this is so, well, this is okay, I guess. After supper, his grandfather opened the door at the bottom of the compost bin, and he pulled out all this compost that was just like Alex's father got in bags at the store. He said, when did you put that in? I didn't put it in. I put the gross stuff at the top. And it becomes compost that's good for our garden. I don't make this stuff up. Alex is like, wow. And it's free. So when his father came to pick him up, he said, so Alex, what'd you do all day? Well, we played video games. And then he and his grandfather looked at each other and winked. Now let's sing our children to their classes. As you go, may joy surround you. As you go, go in peace. Know our love is with you always. As you go, as you go. I was out in the woods yesterday, and the chorus frogs are out. I like to call them plastic comb frogs because this is what they sound like. All right? Sure sign of spring. I like all the seasons. There's something to recommend every season, but I have to confess my favorite is spring. All the green stuff is coming up and the things in various colors, and you can see like microscopic little plants, and the birds are out, the chorus frogs. I'll invite you to close your eyes if you wish, put your feet flat on the floor, and visualize, even if spring is not your favorite, visualize what you can see in the spring. The tulips and the daffodils, the robins, and the first insects. And while you're breathing and visualizing, do think about what change can we make in the environment that maybe this church can be involved in. Now open your eyes, re-enter this space. We've got lots to do. First thing we'll do is we enter this space bringing with us joys, concerns, challenges, and blessings. If you have something either weighing or dancing on your heart, you're invited to come up and drop a stone. If you wish, you can say a name, a word, a short phrase to share your intention. I'll start. We weren't here the exact weekend, but in March was the 20th anniversary of my and Sue's joining the church. One of the two best decisions I ever made in my life.
Who am I first? I don't think she's here today, but maybe she's watching. I wanted to celebrate the fact that our own Kim Savage got elected to be the super... Oh, there she is. She's here. She was hiding. Stand up. And she is now the supervisor of Downers Grove Township, so treat her with respect. And along with it, all of the people who were running with her got elected too. and all the people running on our side for all 9 townships in DuPage won. And I also want to celebrate, yes, I'm sorry, I have 2 stones. Celebrate all the people who were marching yesterday and protesting. There were a lot of us.
Hi, I'm Deb, and I am celebrating a meet and greet that happened yesterday after the march between our new rescue dog, Booker, who's very big and bouncy and mouthy and 62 pounds, and a tiny, anxious little mini Aussie that Shelby owns, and they did well.
I'm Tony, and I'm celebrating my mother, Harriet's 96th birthday yesterday.
Kathy, and my concern is that my dear friend is moving to assisted living today, and he seems to be taking it well. I hope it's going to work out.
Can you believe all this? I got 2 hearing aids this week, and I'm getting used to all this paraphernalia. Don't get old, believe me. In 1970s, 4 of us, we didn't have a minister then, we didn't have a cleaner-upper, so 4 of us cleaned the RE building, painted it, washed, scrubbed the stairs from top to bottom. And it was Liz Schmitz, Barbara Elrod, Jeannie Downing, and myself. And we did a good job. And Charlie Fisher and I received notice that Jeannie Downing passed away. They had moved to Ann Arbor. And if you remember her, she was a very fine person. So for Jeannie Downing.
Good morning. My name is Gail Stone, and I have a joy and a concern regarding my daughter. And I don't know which one to do first. I don't want to leave on a downer, but the joy is that my daughter was reinstated actually as a lawyer Friday afternoon in Minnesota. It's the 3rd time she's passed a bar in a different state, because it's not reciprocal unless you practice. So that's a great joy, but her brother-in-law is dealing with liver cancer and also now has some kind of mass in his brain, and they're going to do a craniotomy. So, you know, joy and sorrow.
Hi, I'm Kim, and I just want to thank everybody who's been on my public service journey for my entire life here, but for the last 20 or so years. People here have been with me, but I absolutely want to give a shout out to people who were instrumental and inspirational in my life, and a lot of you don't know who they are, but Elise Cade, Louise Noble, Vilaine Carnell, and so many other women who were inspirational to us in RE. And so now I want to give a shout out to RE. If you have grandchildren, nieces, nephews, or friends with children, get them involved in RE. I would not be here without the RE program here. And there's a few other people that I grew up with in here that came through RE, but please, that is how we are going to change things. It all starts local.
I'm Darren, and I dropped a pebble for joy to thank so many of you who've asked how my daughter is doing, because she got a warning of a pink notice about 2 months ago. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, stood up to the leadership and said, "You're not going to take my people from the State Department." She got an email to that effect. That was probably not so editorialized as I just did, but so I just wanted to update everybody because so many people have asked, so thank you.
We'll add some more stones for those concerns that are too tender to share and the joys that we hold in our heart.
Series of readings that Dave has put together here. First of all, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Second, keep alert, stand firm in your faith, be courageous and strong. Let all that you do be done in love. And then from Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. When you are offended by any man's shameless conduct, ask yourself, is it possible that there should not be shameless men in the world? It is not possible. Do not then require what is impossible. The same with the man who is knave, the faithless man, and with every man who does wrong in any way. No one of these has done anything by which your mind could be made worse. And any harm or evil to you is only in your mind. Did you expect the shameless man or the faithless man to act any different? Your only mistake would have been to trust such a man. So let's say these words together as we introduce the offertory. Let this church made of all of us. It is what we learn together, the work we do together, fun we have together, is we share with one another, with people around us, and with all the world. Thank you in advance for your generosity.
There's one announcement that I skipped over earlier, and I apologize to Tony. Tony Taylor has lent someone some CSO tickets, and if you're confused about the tickets, they're really for him. So, Tony, raise your hand. If you are holding CSO tickets that you're not supposed to, go see Tony. Sorry. Would you rather live in San Diego, or would you rather be Joan the Fair Maid of Kent? That's how I started a message a little over 5 years ago. My message was that San Diego is very nice and the weather is the same all the time and it's so beautiful, but is it best for everything to be just fine all the time? By contrast, Joan the Fair Maid of Kent, one of my favorite characters in history, who lived in the 1300s, had a life that was a roller coaster. Tragedy, excellent results, wealth, poverty. She was in royalty. Her son became king only after she worked very hard to make that happen. And the message was, we all need some difficult times in our lives to make us appreciate the good times. That service was at the end of 2019, just about 3 months before we all learned the word coronavirus. I did not mean that kind of difficult times. I apologize. And today I get to do a service on joy. Yeah, sure, look around. We have so much to be joyful about. But I'm going to do my best. And of course, when you get me up here, you get history. So we're going to have some history and, like the grandfather in this story, some quotes from weird old people. How many people listen to Those Were the Days? That's the old-time radio show on WDCB. That's kind of, sort of. It's a show that plays shows from the golden age of radio in the 1930s and 40s. That was when radio had shows like TV shows. There were cop shows and comedy shows and soap operas during the day, and Those Were the Days plays some of those old shows. They used to be on a different station. And back in the early 90s, 50 years after World War II, they would play at least one show from exactly 50 years earlier every week. So you could hear what it was like to be in America during World War II. So around December 7th of 1991, they played the music and dancing show that was interrupted by the news that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. And then for the next few months, from early 1942, played in 1992, the news was always bad. After Pearl Harbor, the Japanese went from one victory to another. They took Wake Island, which was America's farthest west outpost in the Pacific. They took the Philippines, Hong Kong, Singapore, a bunch of islands in Indonesia. And the British had been holding their own against the Germans in Europe. They had survived the Blitz. They were bombing German facilities. They were pushing the German army back in North Africa. But because they had to move Navy ships to the South Pacific to fight the Japanese, the Germans were able to supply their troops in North Africa, and they started to push the British back toward Egypt and the Suez Canal. And if they lost that, their war effort was pretty much doomed. So listening to old-time radio in 1992, 50 years after all these events, you could just feel how bleak things were at the beginning of the war. There didn't seem to be any reason for optimism. Then at the end of April 1942, Japan decided to try to take over Midway Island. Midway Island is a small island. It's actually two tiny islands, a little west of Hawaii. It was owned by the U.S. It had an airfield and a little harbor to bring in supplies, and that was about it. Japan figured that if they could capture Midway, they could station bombers there and bomb Hawaii and Pearl Harbor anytime they wanted. See, when they bombed Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, they had to send their whole aircraft carrier fleet halfway across the ocean, and it only worked because it was a complete surprise. So there was no way that that was going to work again. But if they could station bombers on Midway and bomb Pearl Harbor, including all the repair facilities and the dry docks and the fuel tanks, whenever they wanted, they could make Hawaii unsafe for the U.S. Navy. And if they could get the U.S. to move their Pacific fleet from Hawaii back to the mainland, it would be hard to get the Navy to the Southwest Pacific, where all the fighting was going on. So the Japanese sent a whole invasion fleet, landing craft, destroyers, and cruisers to protect them, a couple of battleships, and 4 aircraft carriers with over 300 planes. At the time, Japanese had 6 big aircraft carriers. 2 were at home for repairs. The U.S. had 4 big carriers. 1 was home for repairs. The Japanese had more carriers. They had more planes, more ships of all kinds, but the U.S. had one advantage. They knew they were coming. The U.S. had broken the main Japanese code, and they knew where and when the invasion was going to arrive. So they stationed their 3 working carriers a little northwest of Midway, so they would be in range of the Japanese fleet, but not in their way. The Japanese planes arrived and bombed the airfield on Midway, but the Americans knew they were coming, so the planes were all up in the air, and they bombed empty runways. Then the U.S. sent waves of planes at the Japanese fleet. Several waves of U.S. planes didn't do any damage, but then some dive bombers found the Japanese carriers, and within 10 minutes, and some historians have called this the most decisive 10 minutes in the history of warfare, they hit 3 of the 4 Japanese carriers. Big explosions, big fires. Of course, the planes can't take off. The Japanese had 1 working carrier left, so they managed to launch a bunch of planes, and they found one of the U.S. carriers, the Yorktown, and bombed it and set it on fire. But then more U.S. planes came over, and they found that 4th Japanese carrier. Again, big explosion, big fire. The planes that had bombed the Yorktown came back, no place to land. They had a ditch in the ocean. By the end of the night, 3 of the 4 Japanese carriers had sunk. In the morning, they had 1 carrier working. They had gotten the fires out, they had done repairs. The ship could move, but only very slowly. So they had to decide whether to have the rest of the fleet try to escort the carrier home, but they'd have to move very slowly, and they'd be sitting ducks because no planes to protect them. So they had to abandon that 4th Japanese carrier. When you abandon a ship on the ocean, you can't leave it floating around because the enemy will come by, they'll board it, and they'll figure out all your secrets. So they had to sink that 4th Japanese carrier. On the American side, they tried to fix the Yorktown. They got it underway, but a Japanese submarine came, put some torpedoes into it, and it sank. At the beginning of the day, the Japanese had 6 carriers to the U.S. 4. They outnumbered the Americans 1.5 to 1. By the next day, the Japanese were down to 2 carriers, and the Americans had 3. The Americans now outnumbered the Japanese 1.5 to 1. And the American industrial machine was just getting revved up. From then to the end of the war, the U.S. outproduced Japan and Germany by big numbers. It was the turning point of the war. Before Midway, the Japanese had not lost a single major battle. After Midway, Japan never won another major battle. After Midway, 5 months into the war, it was just a matter of time. Winston Churchill wrote a 6-volume history of World War II. In his 3rd volume of that 6-volume history, Churchill wrote about Pearl Harbor. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, it was a tragedy. Over 3,000 Americans killed, and besides, America lost most of its battleships and planes, and it exposed just how unprepared the U.S. was to fight the war. But when he heard the news about the attack, Churchill was elated. Finally, the United States, with all its industrial might, which Churchill had worked for 2 years to enlist as an ally, was in the war, big time. Churchill wrote this: "No American will think it wrong of me if I proclaim that to have the United States at our side was to me the greatest joy. I could not foretell the course of events. I do not pretend to have measured accurately the martial might of Japan. But now, at this very moment, I knew the United States was in the war, up to the neck and into the death. So we had won after all. Yes, after Dunkirk, after the fall of France," and here he names a bunch of disasters in Europe. "After all these, we had won the war. Once again in our long island history, we should emerge, however mauled or mutilated, safe and victorious. We should not be wiped out. Our history would not come to an end. We might not even have to die as individuals. Hitler's fate was sealed. Mussolini's fate was sealed. As for the Japanese, they would be ground to powder." Churchill quoted one of his associates thus: "The United States is like a gigantic boiler. Once the fire is lighted under it, there is no limit to the power it can generate." Churchill knew as soon as the U.S. entered the war, victory was assured. It took 5 months of unremitting bad news, but then there was Midway. Then there was the turning point. There's always a turning point. The task will be long, and the way will be hard, but we will prevail. Let's sing a hymn. Stand as you're willing and able. My version of joy includes squirrels hiding their nuts in grass. Have we reached the turning point? Since that convicted felon perjured himself and took a false oath on January 20th, it's been 2.5 months. 2.5 months of unremitting bad news. Who would that be? But here's where we are. Every district court judge has slapped that convicted felon upside the head. Maybe that idea that those founding fathers had to have lifetime appointed judges to shield them from political pressure wasn't such a bad idea. Some knucklehead said we ought to impeach the judges that stand in Trump's way. And Chief Justice of the United States, John Roberts, the corporatist and Trump enabler, said, "Shut up, boy." You haven't heard that talk since. And take heart in the utter incompetence of this unelected gang. Sharing war plans in a Dungeons and Dragons chat room, or these supposed tariffs. I'm sorry, this is true. They took a list of the countries of the world from Wikipedia. They totally made up the numbers to describe tariffs around the world, and they imposed tariffs on uninhabited islands. No tariffs for penguins! And the Republicans in Congress are just now figuring out that maybe these stupid tariffs are a bad idea. And they're starting to stand up to this lunatic, this habitual fraudster. And just this past week, Republicans all over the country caught their lunch in a number of special elections. And we know firsthand how the Republican Party in Illinois did. Back when we thought that George W. Bush was the worst president in history, remember those halcyon days? There are a number of people who said maybe we should just let the Republicans run the country and people will find out how bad their ideas are and turn against them. Well, that's sort of how it is right now. But I didn't think it would have to get this bad. We're like that big boiler that Churchill talked about. Once the fire is lighted, there is no limit to the power that the American people can generate. But it takes an awful lot for Americans to get mad enough to stand up and say, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. The cracks are showing. From Pearl Harbor to Midway was 5 months, and then the turning point. The war dragged on for 3 more years. Maybe the turning point against Trumpism will be 3 months or 5 months. And maybe the struggle will go on for another 1.5 years or 3 more years. When we win, we will be educated, experienced, and we will know the meaning of the words, never again. But for now, to find joy amid all this wreckage, what do? One thing, to bring more joy into your life, there's always time to learn. You can study things like electronics or physics or biology. So here's an example. So a lot of people, you might have an electronic device that's like this. There are a bunch of buttons on the side. And one of the buttons, if you press it, it causes all the images to stop appearing. It causes all the sounds to stop emanating, stops all the notifications and alarms. Here's some physics. Hold this device over an open bag, and by the way, this closely resembles our last cat. Yeah, his name was Squire Grady. Hold the device over an open bag and let go. 100% of the time, physics dictates that it has no choice but to fall into the bag. And the science of optics decides that the material of this bag makes the device invisible. And here's some biology. You've seen that Leonardo da Vinci thing. The arm span of the average adult human is between 5 and 6 feet. This means that if the bag is placed more than 3 feet away, you can't reach it. It's not within the reach of any human being. If you can't reach it, you can't check the news. But you say, I have to keep informed. Yes, you need to know your enemy, but not 24/7. I think about it like sporting events. I've had so many times that I've said, but I'm not going to be able to watch the game. But guess what? You'll win or lose. They'll win or lose, whether you're watching or not. Your turning the TV on does not affect the results. Now, wearing your lucky hat or your lucky socks, that's something. But just watching the game doesn't have any effect. You can turn it off. And if you have to do something, because you work, you go to school, you hang out with people, and there's no way to avoid it, then try an idea from George Orwell's 1984, that novel about the fictional totalitarian dystopia. At the main character's workplace, every morning they would take a break, and everyone would go to the auditorium and join in 10 minutes hate. They would spend 10 minutes screaming and yelling at images of the enemies of the people. And then they would go back to work, having gotten it out of their system. Maybe 10 minutes each day to share the horror stories with your friends and coworkers, and then turn it off. Drop negative emotions like fear and anger. If you're going to pick anger. Fear is debilitating. Anger can be dangerous. It can hurt, but it can achieve things. But don't pick anger either. You don't have to be angry at these people. They're just acting according to their nature. We are trained to say, how can people do these things? Well, because they're monsters. And in the selection from Marcus Aurelius that Ron read, he said, do you think you could live in a world without monsters? No. There's monsters. There's always going to be monsters. The mistake would be to expect them not to act like monsters. They can't make you any worse of a person. But we want to do something to make things better. We don't want to be silent and complacent, so do one thing. Pick one thing that you know you can do. You can join a rally. You can hold up a sign. Or you can make a sign for someone who can stand up at a rally. Or you can make a political contribution. Hey, feeling lonely? Send one modest contribution to one political candidate. You'll have all kinds of friends. There's so much that any of us can do. You don't need to do it all. Do one thing. 300 million Americans. We're like a boiler. And when you've turned off the media and you've done your best to clear and exorcise the evil from your life, how do you move on to actual joy? Remember that everything out there is at war with joy. Joy takes attention. It takes noticing things. It takes tranquility. Everything in our lives says, hey, over here, stop that, look at this, spin these plates. Somebody said that people today get more information in one day than people in the Middle Ages got in a lifetime. Turn it off. There's a horror fiction podcast that I listen to called Pseudopod. It's really good. So Pseudopod, look it up from your podcast delivery place. Here's a quote from episode 841. The machine is right there all the time. It's right there and it hates us. And it needs us. And it hates that it needs us. Do your best to need it as little as possible. Go outside. Go into that native garden that you learned all about from Green Sanctuary. And like Alex and his grandfather, watch the flowering plants shimmer because each one is being visited by a native bee. Look for butterfly eggs. Go out at night and check the time that the lightning bugs all start lighting up. Some nights it's like they've punched their time clocks and they all start lighting up at once. Here's an exercise. I've been talking about retirement with a number of people, and the question is always, what do you do with 8 hours a day? How do you fill 40 hours a week? Somebody had the suggestion that, as practice, you take a day off from work. Don't use the day to catch up on cleaning or tasks or visiting. To do 8 hours of what you think you might want to do when you have the time. Maybe you can't take a whole day off, maybe just a half day off. Maybe even that wouldn't work. But take 4 hours from your home schedule. Tell your family that 2 hours tonight and 1 hour each of the next 2 nights are yours and yours alone. Again, no cleaning, no attending to things. Do that thing you would love to do if you just had the time. Do some art. Try a craft. Read that big fat book, that 6 volume of history that you've been meaning to open. 4 hours joy. Sure beats 10 minutes hate. I've been keeping my ears open this week to find a story that represents joy for me in this difficult time. And Thursday night, I came across it. As soon as I heard it, I knew this was the one for church. You might be familiar with the poem by William Carlos Williams, which is titled, "This Is Just to Say," but it's about the plums, about having eaten the plums. It was read at our wedding, so it's a little special to us. But anyway, it goes like this. It's very short. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me. They were delicious. So sweet and so cold. So this is what I read Thursday night. I have tariffed the penguins that are on Heard Island, and which you are probably assuming did not export goods. Forgive me, they were taking advantage of us. So cunning and so cold. So reads my message for today, Sunday, April 6th. Oh, thank you. You're embarrassing me.
As we extinguish the chalice, please join us in these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of its truth, the warmth of this community, or our commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world.
Now rise and sing our next hymn, oddly named Joy. Oh, Beethoven, you trickster. These are our closing words. For you shall go out in joy and be led back in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall burst into song, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands.
I was trying to think of a song about joy, and originally I thought of Sweetheart